The great chamber of the Galactic Concord stretched for nearly a mile in every direction, its crystalline walls reflecting the light of 1,000 holographic displays that showed the faces of delegates from across the known universe. 847 species had gathered here today, as they had gathered for 12,000 years, to discuss matters of trade and war and the endless business of running a civilization that spanned millions of stars. Ambassador Thalvex of the Vorithian hegemony sat in his elevated pod, all four of his golden eyes fixed on the small delegation that had just entered through the main gates. The creatures were bipedal, standing on two legs with two arms and soft skin that came in various shades of brown and pink and tan. And they walked with a strange confidence that seemed entirely unearned, given what he had read about their species. Humans, he muttered to his aide, a young Vorithian named Cress, who was attending her first council session. They achieved faster-than-light travel only 30 of their years ago, and already they come here asking for membership in the Concord. Cress studied the humans with curiosity rather than disdain. She was young and had not yet learned to look down on lesser species the way her elders did. What do we know about them, Ambassador? Very little worth knowing, Thalvex replied, his mandibles clicking in what passed for a dismissive laugh among his people. They come from a small planet called Earth in an unremarkable system on the outer edge of the Orion Arm, and they have been killing each other for most of their existence. Their technology is laughably primitive, and their military capabilities are, well, you will see for yourself. The human delegation took their place at the central podium, a raised platform where species seeking membership were required to present themselves to the council. At the front stood a woman with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, her face lined with age, but her eyes sharp and alert. And she wore a uniform of dark blue that bore symbols Thalvex did not recognize. "I am Admiral Helena Zhao," the woman announced, her voice carrying through the translation systems that converted her words into 800 different languages simultaneously. "And I speak on behalf of the United Earth Government. We come before this council to request provisional membership in the Galactic Concord and to demonstrate our commitment to peaceful cooperation among the stars." High Chancellor Morvax, an ancient being of pure energy who had led the council for 3 centuries, flickered with something like interest. "You are welcome here, Admiral Zhao. The Concord has always embraced new species who seek to join our community of worlds. Please, present your civilization's capabilities so that we may assess your application." Admiral Zhao nodded and activated a holographic display that materialized above the podium. The first images showed Earth itself, a blue and green world with white clouds swirling across its surface. And then the display shifted to show human cities, human art, human science, human culture. The delegates watched with polite disinterest, for they had seen such presentations many times before. "And now," Zhao said, her voice steady and calm, "I will present our military capabilities, as is required by Council protocol." This was the moment Thalvex had been waiting for. He leaned forward in his seat, eager to see what primitive weapons these creatures had managed to develop. The display showed a human warship, a blocky and angular vessel covered in gray armor plating. It had none of the elegant curves of Vorithian cruisers, none of the sleek beauty of Deshan destroyers, none of the geometric perfection of Kryn battleships. It looked like something a child might build from scrap metal, all hard edges and brutal functionality. "This is the UE's Relentless," Zhao explained, a heavy cruiser of the Terra-class line. It is armed with 16 magnetic accelerator cannons, capable of firing tungsten projectiles at speeds of up to 15 kilometers per second. 48 missile tubes carrying a variety of conventional and nuclear warheads, and point defense batteries using high-velocity autocannons. Silence fell over the chamber for exactly 3 seconds before the laughter began. It started with the Kryn delegation. whose musical voices rose in what could only be described as giggling. Then the Vishans joined in, their serpentine bodies shaking with amusement. And soon the entire chamber was filled with the sounds of 800 species expressing their collective disbelief at what they had just heard. Magnetic accelerators. Dalvex wheezed, tears of laughter streaming from two of his eyes while the other two crinkled with mirth. They use magnetic fields to throw metal at their enemies, like primitives throwing rocks from a cliff. And nuclear weapons? Cress added, caught up in the moment despite her earlier curiosity. We abandoned nuclear fission as a weapon source over 8,000 years ago. It is so barbaric. High Chancellor Morvax restored order with a pulse of energy that silenced the chamber. But even he could not entirely hide his amusement. Admiral Zhao, we thank you for your comprehensive presentation. The Council will take your application under consideration. Everyone in the chamber knew what that meant. Humanity would be granted provisional observer status, a polite way of telling them they were not ready for full membership and probably never would be. They would be assigned some worthless territory on the edge of civilized space and forgotten about within a decade. Admiral Zhao stood perfectly still through all of it, her face showing no emotion as hundreds of alien delegates mocked everything her species had built. She simply waited until the laughter died down. And then she spoke again. We thank the Council for their time and consideration, she said. And there was something in her voice that Thalvex almost missed. Something that sounded almost like satisfaction. Humanity looks forward to learning from the great civilizations of the Concord. As the human delegation turned to leave, Admiral Zhao exchanged a glance with her aide, a young man with dark skin and sharp eyes who had stood silently through the entire presentation. The look that passed between them lasted only a moment, but in that moment there was a shared understanding that none of the assembled delegates noticed or would have understood. If they had seen what they needed. To see the Concord's weapons were elegant and advanced plasma lances that could cut through asteroids, graviton beams that could crush a ship like a tin can, quantum disruptors that could tear apart matter at the molecular level. These were the weapons of civilized species, clean and efficient and utterly beyond anything humanity could produce. But the humans had also seen something else in those displays. Shield frequencies, defensive protocols, power signatures, sensor capabilities. They had seen exactly how the galaxy's greatest powers defended themselves against attack. And they had filed every detail away in their minds as Admiral Zhao walked out of the Great Chamber. Past the delegates who were already forgetting about the primitive newcomers, she allowed herself a small smile. The Concord had looked at humanity's weapons and seen rocks and fire and barbarism. They had not understood what they were really looking at. They had not understood that those weapons had been designed by a species that had spent 30,000 years fighting itself. A species that had refined the art of killing through countless wars and conflicts and massacres. A species that had come within a hair's breadth of destroying itself not once, but multiple times. The galaxy's great powers had pretty weapons and ancient traditions and a comfortable belief that violence was something primitive species did before they evolved past it. Humanity had something else entirely, and one day soon, the galaxy would learn the difference. 18 months had passed since humanity's humiliation at the Galactic Concord. And in that time, the humans had done exactly what everyone expected them to do. They had retreated to their assigned territory on the galaxy's edge and stayed there, building their little colonies and playing with their primitive ships and bothering no one. Warlord Skrixtel of the Kreth-Axe Dominion stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Hunger, and studied the tactical display with all 6 of his compound eyes. The Kreth-Axe were not members of the Concord. They were its greatest enemy. A warrior species of 7 foot. Insectoid predators who had conquered 63 worlds through brutal conquest and enslave billions of beings to serve their empire. The human colonies are poorly defended, his tactical officer reported, clicking his mandibles in anticipation. Their border patrols consist of only a handful of those primitive warships, and their population centers have minimal orbital defense platforms. This will be an easy harvest, Warlord. Scrixtel made a sound of agreement deep in his thorax. The Krethax did not simply destroy their enemies, they harvested them, taking prisoners for slave labor and stripping conquered worlds of every useful resource. It was how they had built their empire, and it was how they would continue to expand until all the galaxy served them. These humans are new to space, Scrixtal said, and they are weak. The Concord laughed at their weapons, and the Concord does not laugh easily. We will take their people for our labor camps and their technology for study, and we will show the galaxy that even the newest species cannot escape the reach of the Dominion. He turned to face his bridge crew, his massive form casting shadows across the command deck. Signal the fleet. We move on the human colony designated New Helsinki. 40 ships should be more than enough to crush any resistance. The Krethax fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the New Helsinki system. 40 warships bristling with plasma cannons and torpedo launchers, their dark hulls scarred from 100 conquests. They expected to find a terrified colony scrambling to evacuate. Perhaps a few brave but foolish defenders trying to buy time for civilians to escape. What they found was silence. The colony on the planet below was empty. Its buildings intact, but its population gone. Evacuated so thoroughly that not a single human remained. And in orbit above the abandoned world floated a single vessel. A blocky and ugly ship that looked like it had been built by welding scrap metal together in a junkyard. One ship, Scrixtal's tactical officer said, confusion evident in his clicking voice. They left one ship to face our entire fleet. Are these humans insane? Scrixtal studied the vessel on his display. It was the UES Perseverance, according to the identification beacon, a human-heavy cruiser of the type that had been mocked so thoroughly at the Concord. It had no shields that his sensors could detect, no energy weapons of any kind. Nothing but thick armor plating and those ridiculous magnetic accelerator cannons. They are not insane, Scrixtal decided. They are simply too primitive to understand what they face. Open a channel. I will give them one chance to surrender before we destroy them. The communication screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the human ship. A woman sat in the command chair, her hair white with age, but her eyes burning with an intensity that made even Scrixtal pause for a moment. She wore a uniform decorated with many symbols, and she held herself with the bearing of someone who had seen many battles. This is Captain Yuki Tanaka of the UE's Perseverance, the woman said, her voice flat and calm. You are in violation of Terran space. Withdraw your fleet immediately or face the consequences. Laughter erupted across the Krethax bridge, the clicking and chittering of 40 officers who found the humans' warning hilarious. One ship threatening 40. It was absurd. It was pathetic. It was exactly the kind of foolish bravery that the Krethax had crushed 1,000 times before. Little human, Scrixtal replied, allowing his contempt to show in every syllable. You have one ship with primitive weapons and no shields. I have 40 warships with technology 1,000 years more advanced than anything you possess. Surrender now, and I will make your death quick. Resist, and I will take you alive so you can watch your crew being eaten. Captain Tanaka did not flinch. She did not show fear or anger or desperation. She simply nodded once, as if she had expected this response, and said, Very well. We tried. The channel closed, and Scrixtal gave the order to attack. What happened next would haunt the survivors for the rest of their lives. The human ship moved with a speed and agility That should have been impossible for a vessel of its size. It did not try to fight at range like a civilized warship would, exchanging fire while maintaining safe distance. Instead, it charged directly at the Kreth Axe formation, closing the gap with terrifying acceleration. "All ships, open fire!" Skrikstal commanded, and 40 warships unleashed their plasma. Cannons in a storm of green fire that should have vaporized the human vessel in seconds. The plasma bolts hit the Perseverance's armor and splashed against it like water against stone. The ship shuddered but kept coming, and then its own weapons spoke. Skrikstal had never seen anything like it. The human ship's cannons did not fire beams of energy or bolts of plasma. They fired solid projectiles, chunks of tungsten metal that crossed the distance between the ships in the blink of an eye. And when those projectiles hit, they did not splash harmlessly against shields like civilized weapons would. They punched straight through the first Kreth Axe destroyer, simply exploded, its hull torn apart by impacts moving faster than the eye could follow. The second ship lost its entire forward section in a single hit. The third, fourth, and fifth died so quickly that their crews never had time to scream, "How is this possible?" Skrikstal roared as his tactical display filled with damage reports and death notifications. "Their weapons should not be able to penetrate our shields." "Warlord," his tactical officer replied, his voice trembling with something that might have been fear. "They are not shooting through our shields. Their projectiles are traveling so fast that they arrive before our shields can react. The kinetic energy alone is—" He never finished the sentence. A tungsten round traveling at 15 kilometers per second punched through the Eternal Hunger's bridge and reduced everything inside to scattered atoms. The battle lasted 9 minutes. When it was over, 26 Kreth Axe warships were nothing but expanding clouds of debris, and the remaining 14 were fleeing into faster-than-light travel as fast as their engines could carry them. The UES Perseverance sat alone in the void, its armor scarred and dented, but its weapons still hot and ready. Captain Tanaka watched the enemy ships disappear from her display and allowed herself a small nod of satisfaction. The first test had been a success, and the Kreth Axe survivors would carry the tale back to their masters, a tale of impossible destruction, of primitive weapons that killed with brutal efficiency, of a single ship that had broken an entire fleet. She opened a channel to Earth Command. "Admiral Zhao, this is Perseverance. The enemy has been engaged and repelled. Enemy losses are 26 ships destroyed. Our losses are 0. There was a pause before Admiral Zhao's reply came through, and when it did, there was a hint of something almost like pride in her voice. "Well done, Captain. Begin cleanup operations immediately. I want every piece of wreckage collected before anyone else arrives. The galaxy isn't ready to see what we can do." "Understood, Admiral," Tanaka replied. Perseverance out, as her crew began the work of erasing all evidence of the battle. Tanaka looked out at the stars and wondered how long it would be before the galaxy learned the truth about humanity. Not long now. She thought not long at all. 6 months after the battle at New Helsinki, the Kreth Axe Dominion launched its largest military operation in a century. Warlord Skrikstal was dead, killed in what the survivors described as an impossible ambush. And the new Supreme Commander of the Dominion had decided that humanity needed to be taught a lesson that the entire galaxy would remember. These humans got lucky. Supreme Commander Vrexkol declared to his war council. One ship against a poorly led fleet, such things happen. But luck will not save them from the full might of the Dominion. I am sending the Third Armada to burn their worlds and harvest their people, and when we are done, no one will ever mock the Kreth Axe again. The Third Armada consisted of 200 warships, including 12 of the massive Devastator-class battleships that could crack a planet's crust with their primary weapons. It was a force capable of conquering an entire sector. a hammer designed to crush any resistance into dust. The Armada departed for human space with great ceremony. Broadcast live across the Dominion's communication networks. Millions of Kretheks watched as their greatest warriors set out to avenge the humiliation at New Helsinki. They never saw those warriors again. 1 week after the Third Armada entered human space, all contact was lost. No distress signals, no battle reports, no survivors fleeing home with tales of defeat. 200 ships and over 50,000 Kretheks simply vanished as if they had never existed. Supreme Commander Vrex Cole refused to believe what his intelligence officers were telling him. Fleets did not simply disappear. They won or they lost, but they did not cease to exist without leaving some trace behind. He ordered the Fourth Armada to investigate 300 ships this time. With orders to proceed cautiously and report everything they found, the Fourth Armada vanished as well, and then the Fifth, and then the Sixth. By the time the Galactic Concord began paying attention, the Kretheks Dominion had lost over 1,000 warships, and the Supreme Commander had locked himself in his chambers, refusing to send another ship anywhere near human territory. The once proud warrior empire was paralyzed with a terror they had never known before. Ambassador Thalvex of the Verithian hegemony sat in his office aboard the Concord station, studying the intelligence reports with growing unease. He had been one of those who laughed loudest at humanity's primitive weapons, and now that laughter felt hollow in his throat. "This cannot be accurate," he said to his intelligence chief, a veteran analyst who had served the hegemony for over 60 years. "The Kretheks are brutal, but they are not incompetent. They would not send fleet after fleet into a trap without learning from their mistakes. And yet they did." "Ambassador," the analyst replied, spreading data files across the holographic display, "our best estimates suggest that humanity has destroyed between 1,200 and 1,500 Kretheks warships in the past 6 months. The Dominion has lost nearly half of its military strength, and they have not confirmed a single human casualty." Thalvex felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. "How is that possible?" "The humans have perhaps 200 warships at most, and their technology is primitive," the analyst finished. "Yes, Ambassador, that is what we believed. But I think perhaps we need to reconsider what primitive actually means." The Verithian hegemony dispatched a reconnaissance drone to the edge of human space, a tiny unmanned craft designed to observe without being detected. It took up position in an asteroid field near the last known location of the Kretheks Fourth Armada and began recording. What it captured would change the galaxy's understanding of humanity forever. The drone detected a Kretheks raiding force entering the system, 50 ships on what was clearly a revenge mission. Their weapons hot and their crews hungry for human blood. And waiting for them was a human battle group of just 15 vessels. Those ugly, blocky warships that looked so pathetic compared to Concord technology. The battle began like all battles, with the two forces maneuvering for position. But within seconds, it became clear that this was not a battle at all. It was a slaughter. The human ships did not fight the way civilized species fought. They did not maintain formation, did not exchange fire at safe distances, did not wait for shields to recharge between engagements. They charged directly into the Kretheks formation like predators attacking a herd of prey, and their weapons spoke with a voice of thunder. The drone's sensors struggled to track what was happening. The electromagnetic interference from the human weapons was overwhelming, filling every frequency with static and noise. But through the chaos, the drone captured images that would be studied by military analysts across the galaxy for centuries. Railguns, firing rods of tungsten at speeds that defied belief, each impact releasing more energy than a tactical nuclear weapon. Missiles that split into dozens of smaller projectiles, each one homing in on a different target. point defense systems so dense with projectiles that enemy fighters flew into walls of metal death, and the human ships themselves, absorbing hit after hit from Krethak's plasma cannons. Their armor glowing red from the heat, but never breaking, never falling, never stopping. The drone recorded a human cruiser continuing to fight with 17% of its hull missing. Atmosphere venting from a dozen breaches, while its crew sealed themselves in pressure suits and kept firing. It recorded a human destroyer ramming a Krethak's battleship at full speed. Both vessels destroyed in a collision. That should have been unthinkable to any civilized species. But the most disturbing thing the drone captured happened after the battle was over, when the last Krethak ship had been reduced to debris. Human recovery vessels emerged from hiding and swept through the battlefield with mechanical precision. They collected every piece of wreckage, every escape pod, every chunk of debris that might contain useful information. They left nothing behind, not a single fragment that could be analyzed by outside observers, and then they did something that made Thalvek's blood run cold. They found the drone. The recording showed a human vessel approaching the asteroid field, its sensors sweeping the area with methodical thoroughness. It found the drone within minutes, plucked it from its hiding spot with a tractor beam, and brought it aboard for examination. The last image the drone transmitted before its destruction showed a human face staring into its camera, a young woman with dark eyes and an expression of calm curiosity. She studied the drone for a moment, then smiled and reached for the power switch. The recording ended there. Thalvek sat in silence for a long time, processing what he had seen. The humans knew they were being watched, and they had allowed the drone to record the battle before capturing it. They wanted the Concorde to see what they could do, but they also wanted the Concorde to know that they knew it was a message. Clear and unmistakable. We see everything. We hide nothing by accident, and if you come for us, this is what awaits you. For the first time since he had joined the diplomatic corps, Ambassador Thalvax felt something he had never felt when dealing with another species. He felt afraid. The Concorde called an emergency session the next day, and the chamber that had once rung with laughter at humanity's expense was now filled with whispers of fear and confusion. Something had changed in the galaxy, something that none of them had expected. The primitives had teeth, and those teeth were sharper than anyone had imagined. The great chamber of the Galactic Concorde had never been so quiet. 847 species sat in perfect silence, their usual chatter and side conversations abandoned, their attention fixed on the central podium where a single human stood waiting to speak. Admiral Helena Zhao had aged in the 2 years since her last appearance before the council. Her hair was grayer now, her face more lined, and there was a hardness in her eyes that had not been there before. But she stood with the same quiet confidence she had shown on that first day, when the entire galaxy had laughed at her primitive weapons. High Chancellor Morvax flickered with nervous energy as he called the session to order. Admiral Zhao, you have been summoned before this council to answer questions regarding the conflict between humanity and the Kreth-Axe Dominion. Over the past 18 months, more than 1,500 Kreth-Axe warships have been lost in human space, and the Concorde demands to know how this was accomplished. You want answers, Zhao said, and her voice carried through the silent chamber like a blade through silk. You want to know how a primitive species with laughable weapons managed to destroy the most feared military force in the galaxy. You want to know why your sensors cannot penetrate our borders. You want to know what we are building in the darkness between stars. She paused, letting her gaze sweep across the assembled delegates. I will tell you. Admiral Jia activated a holographic display, and the chamber filled with images from human history, but not the images of cities and art and culture that she had shown during her first presentation. These images were different. They showed war. 30,000 years ago, Zhao began. My species climbed down from the trees and learned to walk upright. Within a few centuries, we had invented weapons-sharp stones tied to sticks, clubs made from bone, spears that could kill from a distance. We used these weapons to hunt animals for food. She changed the image to show humans fighting each other, primitive tribes clashing with primitive fury. But we did not stop there. We turned our weapons on each other. Tribe fought tribe, clan fought clan, and the winners took everything while the losers died. This was how our species learned its first lesson: kill or be killed. The images shifted forward in time, showing bronze swords and iron spears, armored soldiers, and siege weapons. We refined our weapons with every generation. We built better swords, stronger armor, deadlier poisons. We invented the bow and arrow, then the crossbow, then the gun. Each new weapon was created because the old weapons were not deadly enough. The chamber watched as human history unfold, the trenches of the First World War, the bombed cities of the Second, the mushroom clouds of nuclear weapons rising over ruined landscapes. We invented weapons that could destroy cities in a single blast. We built bombs that could kill millions in an instant. We created poisons that could wipe out entire populations. Zhao's voice remained calm, almost gentle, as she showed them the worst of humanity. We came within a hair's breadth of destroying ourselves. Not once, not twice, but many times. Our history is written in blood, measured in body counts, defined by an endless cycle of violence that shaped everything we are. She turned off the display and faced the council directly. You looked at our weapons and saw primitives throwing rocks. You did not understand what you were seeing. Those weapons represent the endpoint of 30,000 years of evolution, not technological evolution, but the evolution of killing itself. Ambassador Thalvax found his voice at last. Admiral Zhao, you speak of your history as if it were something to be proud of. Surely you must see that such barbarism is barbarism? Zhao interrupted, and there was something dangerous in her smile. Ambassador, your species achieved spaceflight 6,000 years ago. In all that time, you have fought exactly 3 wars, all of them resolved within a decade through diplomatic negotiation. Your military exists primarily for ceremonial purposes. She took a step forward, and despite himself, Thalvax flinched. My species has been at war with itself continuously for our entire existence. We have never known a single generation of true peace. Every weapon we possess was designed not by scientists seeking elegant solutions, but by desperate people trying to survive long enough to kill their enemies first. Your plasma lances are efficient. Zhao continued. Your graviton beams are sophisticated. Your quantum disruptors are technologically impressive. But they were all developed in laboratories by researchers who had never seen a battlefield, who had never watched their friends die, who had never felt the desperate need to kill or be killed. She gestured toward the display, which now showed a human railgun firing. Our weapons are crude by your standards. They use simple physics, kinetic energy, explosive force, metal moving very fast. But they were refined through countless wars, tested in actual combat, improved by soldiers who knew that any weakness would mean death. The Krethax came to our space expecting easy prey. Zhao said. They found something else. They found a species that had been waging total war against itself for millennia. A species that had mastered the art of violence in ways that peaceful civilizations cannot comprehend. She reached into her pocket and produced a small device, which she set on the podium. This is a recording of the final transmission from the Krethax Supreme Commander. He died 3 days ago, when our forces finally reached their homeworld. The recording played, filling the chamber with the sound of a terrified voice speaking in clicks and chittering. The translation systems converted it to galactic standard. They are everywhere. They do not stop. They do not negotiate. They do not take prisoners. They just keep killing. How do you fight an enemy that does not fear death. How do you? The recording cut off abruptly, and Zhao retrieved the device. The Krethak's dominion no longer exists. Their worlds have been occupied, their military has been destroyed, and their surviving population has been placed under human administration. The war is over. The silence in the chamber was absolute. 847 species stared at the human admiral, processing what she had just told them. The Krethaks, who had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, had been completely defeated in less than 2 years. "This is my warning to the Galactic Concord," Zhao said, and her voice was soft but carried to every corner of the chamber. "Humanity desires peace. We will trade with you, cooperate with you, stand beside you against common threats. We have no wish to conquer or to dominate." Her eyes hardened. "But if any member of this Concord mistakes our desire for peace as weakness, if any of your fleets crosses into our space with hostile intent, you will share the fate of the Krethaks. We will not stop until every ship is destroyed, every world is occupied, every threat is eliminated." She smiled, and for the first time, the council saw the predator that lurked behind the diplomat's mask. "You have better technology than we do. You have cleaner weapons, more elegant ships, more sophisticated tactics. But we have been killing since before we had words for it." Admiral Zhao turned and walked toward the exit, pausing only at the threshold to look back at the stunned assembly. "Do not make us show you what we have learned." And then she was gone, leaving behind a chamber full of beings who were only now beginning to understand what humanity really was. 10 years had passed since Admiral Zhao's warning to the Galactic Concord, and the galaxy had transformed in ways that no one could have predicted. The old order of ancient powers and comfortable alliances had been swept away, replaced by something new and uncertain and fundamentally different from what had come before. The Terran Confederacy, as humanity now called itself, held a permanent seat on the Concord's Security Council. No one had offered them this seat, and no one had voted on whether to grant it. The humans had simply announced that they would be participating in all future security discussions, and no one had found the courage to object. Ambassador Thalvex, now elderly and retired from active diplomatic service, stood at the observation window of the Concord station and watched a human diplomatic vessel dock at the main port. Beside it floated a Terran battlecruiser, its hull bristling with railgun batteries and missile tubes, its armor scarred from battles that Thalvex did not want to imagine. He was no longer the proud and confident diplomat who had laughed at humanity's primitive weapons. The years had humbled him, taught him lessons that still kept him awake at night. He had watched the galaxy change around him, and he had finally understood truths that his younger self could never have accepted. A young Vorithian aide approached him, the same Kress who had attended that first council session so many years ago. She was no longer young either, her scales faded with age, but she still served the hegemony with quiet dedication. "Ambassador," she said, using his old title out of respect, "the human delegation has arrived. They wish to discuss the trade agreement." Thalvex nodded slowly. "Of course they do. The humans always wish to discuss trade agreements. It is how they expand without firing a shot." He turned to face Kress, all four of his eyes clouded with age, but still sharp with intelligence. "Do you remember what I said when we first saw the humans? When Admiral Zhao presented their military capabilities to the council? You said they were primitives throwing rocks," Kress replied. "You said their weapons were laughable. I was a fool," Thalvex said quietly. "We all were. We looked at their guns and saw technology thousands of years behind our own. We did not see what those guns represented." He gestured toward the viewport, where the human battlecruiser hung in space like a patient predator. The Krethaks were warriors. They conquered 63 worlds and enslaved billions. They were the most feared military power in the galaxy, and the humans destroyed them in 18 months. The Krethaks were arrogant, Kress said. They underestimated. The Krethaks were warriors, Thalvex interrupted. We are scientists and diplomats. The Theshans are artists and philosophers. The Kryn are merchants and explorers. Every species in the Concord has a role, a purpose, a defining characteristic that shapes their civilization. He pointed at the human ship. Do you know what the humans are? They are specialists. They specialize in one thing, and they have spent their entire existence perfecting it. War, Kress said softly. Killing, Thalvex corrected. Not just war killing in all its forms. They have studied it, refined it, industrialized it. They have made it into a science more precise than anything our laboratories have ever produced. Their entire history is an experiment in finding more efficient ways to end lives. He shook his head slowly. We abandoned kinetic weapons because they were primitive, because energy weapons were cleaner and more elegant. We never considered that someone might keep developing kinetic weapons, might spend thousands of years making them deadlier, might turn crude physics into something terrifying. The human delegation was disembarking now. A group of diplomats in formal attire surrounded by guards in light armor. They looked so ordinary, so unremarkable, just soft-skinned bipeds with no claws or venom or natural weapons of any kind. And yet every species on the station gave them a wide berth. Stepping aside without being asked, avoiding eye contact, treating them with the careful respect that prey gives to predators. I have studied human history, Thalvex said. I have read about their wars, their weapons, their endless conflicts. Do you know what I learned? I learned that they nearly destroyed themselves, not once but many times. Nuclear weapons, biological agents, climate collapse, any one of these could have ended their species. But they survived. Kress observed. They did more than survive, Thalvex replied. They learned. Every near extinction taught them something new about killing, about surviving, about fighting against impossible odds. They emerged from each crisis stronger and more dangerous than before. He turned away from the viewport, suddenly tired. The Concord has existed for 12,000 years. We have built a civilization of peace and cooperation and mutual prosperity. We believed that this was the natural state of intelligent life, that violence was something primitive species outgrew when they became civilized. The humans showed us otherwise, Kress said. The humans showed us that violence is not a phase to be outgrown, Thalvex said. For them, it is a core competency, a fundamental skill that defines their species. They did not evolve past it, they evolved through it. They became what they are because of it. He began walking toward the diplomatic reception area, his steps slow with age. When I was young, I asked myself why the humans seemed so calm when we laughed at them. Admiral Zhao stood there and took our mockery without flinching, and I thought it was because she was too primitive to understand what we were saying. He stopped and looked back at Kress. Now I know the truth. She was not offended by our laughter because she knew something we did not. She knew that our elegant weapons and advanced technology meant nothing against a species that had spent 30,000 years learning to kill. She knew that, when the time came, all our sophistication would not save us. Kress fell into step beside him as they walked toward the reception. What do you think will happen now? The humans have been peaceful for 10 years. They trade with us, cooperate with us, even help protect weaker species from aggression. Perhaps they have truly changed. Thalvex made a sound that might have been a laugh if it had not been so bitter. They have not changed. They have simply found no reason to fight. They are like a predator that has eaten its fill, peaceful and content for now, but always watching, always ready. He stopped at the entrance to the reception area, watching the human diplomats smile and shake hands with their alien counterparts. The galaxy used to mock human firepower. Now the galaxy fears it. But I think we have still not truly understood what we are dealing with. What do you mean? Cress Astalvex watched a human child run past, chasing some small toy through the crowd. Just an ordinary child, laughing and playing, completely innocent. I mean that we fear their weapons, their ships, their military might. But those things are just tools. The truly terrifying thing about humans is not what they have built. He turned to face Cress one last time. The truly terrifying thing is what they are. They are a species forged in violence, shaped by war, defined by an endless struggle for survival. Violence is not something they do. It is something they are. He gestured toward the human delegation, toward the diplomats and guards and ordinary citizens who had come to discuss trade and cooperation and peace. Look at them. They seem so normal, so friendly, so willing to work together. And they are all of those things until they are threatened. And then? Cress Astalvex did not answer. He did not need to. They both knew what happened when humanity felt threatened. Entire armadas vanished, and the galaxy learned to stop laughing.